Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of Q&A, Comics, Movies, and Video Games. I am your host, Michael Flores. Today I bring to you a new Versus fight straight from the pages of Marvel Comics in the X-Men / X-Force story arcs. Today's fight comes to you by request from a good friend, Stacy Jackson, who asks, if Sabretooth from X-Men had a contract to eliminate Warpath of X-Force, and there was no outside involvement from their allies, could Victor Creed collect his bounty? Before we get started, we should stop for a moment and compare these two warriors and their statistical characteristics, such as their vitals, etc. We're going to start with Sabretooth. His real name is Victor Creed. Now, he stands in at 6'6" and weighs 275 pounds. Now, in later stories, he did get an adamantium skeleton where he weighed 380 pounds. His eyes are amber-colored and his hair is blonde. His unusual features are that he has elongated canines, claws at the tips of his fingers and toes, and vertical pupils. In the other corner, we have Warpath. His real name is James Proudstar. He stands in at 7'2", weighs in at 350 pounds. He has brown eyes, black hair. And his unusual features are that he has a Thunderbird tattoo on his back in honor of his brother who died working with the X-Men. Now, before we break down the fight and how it would take place, we should take a look at the origins of these characters and try to figure out where they come from and what drives them. I'll start each section of this with a quote from the characters so you can kind of get a feel for what they would mentally think of going into this. We'll start with Sabretooth. His quote is, "But see, I did leave some scratches. You ain't invulnerable. And that makes me wonder, given some time and some determination, just how much damage I can do." Sabretooth, as we mentioned, is known as Victor Creed. He's a violent and savage mutant mercenary and a battle-trained soldier who has formerly worked with many different programs. He's worked with the Weapon X program, he's worked with X-Force, Magneto's X-Men, the Avengers Unity Division, the Wolverines, the Astonishing Avengers, the Hellfire Club's Academy. He's worked with the Hand. He's been an overlord in the Yakuza. He worked with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the X-Men, the Marauders, X-Factor, the Hounds, the Avengers, Team X, which was part of the CIA, Logan's mutant team called Lethal Legion, and he was a former partner of Constrictor. So it goes without saying, he does have a lot of training when it comes to getting the job done. When Victor Creed's mutation first manifested, he accidentally killed his brother over a piece of pie. His father confined him to the cellar and would systematically pull out Victor's devil teeth in an attempt to purge the boy of these demons. Victor was chained up like an animal in the family cellar for years, until one day he chewed off his own hand in order to break free, subsequently murdering his father for the torture. Now, although later he would claim that he had to kill his mother as well, he actually spared her and made sure she lived a comfortable life until she was diagnosed with cancer and confined to a hospital where she was killed by a member of the Red Right Hand. Freed from his parents, Victor was unleashed upon society. At age 13, he reportedly rampaged across 3 Canadian provinces and killed at least 3 police officers. According to Creed, he remained in Canada and at about 15 worked for the railroad, laying down railroads for Calgary up to the Yukon. Now, among the workers on the line was a belligerent older man who delighted in picking on teenage Creed. Though the man was 100 pounds heavier than him, Creed gutted him from crotch to Adam's apple with his claws. Now, I want to point out that Creed has been a soldier in pretty much almost every war you can name. He's been in World War I, Korean War, Vietnam, in addition to joining the Avengers 1959 team. As I mentioned, he did work with Team X, which was a CIA-run operation in the 60s. Now, in the other corner, we have Warpath, also known as James Proudstar. His personal quote for this encounter is, "My name is James Proudstar. I don't want to be a killer, but now I have no choice." In the early years, he was born on an Apache reservation in Camp Verde, Arizona. As a young boy, James idolized his older brother, John Proudstar. And when John returned from a stint in the Marines, James was overjoyed to see him again. Unfortunately, their mother revealed to the family that she had cancer, prompting a visit to an amusement park where James had his fortune told to him by none other than Destiny. Though James thought she was a fraud, I gotta point out that James secretly accompanied John when he infiltrated Arroyo Labs, the clinic that was running tests on their reservation's people and treating them for cancer. James was discovered by Dr. Edwin Martinek, who revealed himself to be a mutated werewolf. The brothers learned that this doctor was faking the cancer diagnosis so he could irradiate his patients and observe the results. John was soon recruited by the X-Men and killed on one of the team's first missions. James blamed the X-Men for his brother's death and promised to murder its founder, Charles Xavier. Now, there was a lot happening that led up to where he is now. He was a member of the Hellions. He was a member of X-Force. He was looking for everything that he could think of to give him the tools he needed to accomplish his goals. Now we're going to look at how these two stack up statistic-wise according to Marvel Comics and their charts. And we're going to start first with we're going to compare first their intelligence. Now, they both have shown various levels of intelligence for different aptitudes. Marvel gives them both a 2 on their scale of intelligence. Now, when we break that down, does that mean that one of them is not smarter in some areas than the other? Well, I think when it comes to combat and warfare, Sabretooth would be smarter than Warpath. However, I think that there are other areas where Warpath would be smarter than Sabretooth. Then we move on to strength. Now, both of these guys are physically stronger than your average person. They gave Sabretooth a 3 for strength, and they gave Warpath a 4 for strength. Now, does that necessarily mean that Sabretooth is easily outpowered. I don't think that it's that simple. Now, next we have the category of speed. Sabretooth has a 2, and Warpath has a 3 for speed. Now, that breaks down to Warpath can run approximately 100 miles an hour. But that's in a straight line. That doesn't determine agility. Next, we have durability. Durability, they gave Sabretooth a 4, and they gave Warpath a 3. I personally would have gave Warpath a 4 also, but that's just my opinion. Both of them are durable in their own right. Now, Sabretooth generally isn't as durable, but he does have abilities that will compensate for that, which I'll discuss later. But I think all in all, they kind of are going with the idea that he has the adamantium skeleton now, so that makes him a little more durable than he normally is. Next, we have energy projection. I would say that energy projection has a lot of aspects that most people don't take into account. Now, Marvel gave them both a 1 on this scale. I should point out that their scale goes from 1 to 7, 7 being the max possible ability for that region. But energy projection, Warpath was trained kind of as a shaman, so he would have some level of energy, considering that he can do astral projection, stuff like that. So I would give him at least a 2 personally, which would put him on top of those 2 categories. But Sabretooth can see that kind of stuff, so it would kind of balance out. Next, we have fighting skills. They both are registered as a 6 on fighting skills. I personally disagree. I think that when it comes to fighting, Sabretooth has been trained in various fighting styles, whereas Warpath primarily is a brawler. Now, I will say that Sabretooth usually doesn't use his fighting skills. He uses raw power, so it kind of evens out. So in that aspect, yeah, they are pretty evenly matched when it comes to brawling and physical power when it comes to ripping their opponents apart or smashing through obstacles. So yeah, that's that. Um, Truthfully, all in all, at this point, before we break down the abilities of these characters, I would like to point out that I think realistically, Sabretooth does have him a little bit outmatched, primarily because of his own personal abilities and his training. But we're going to go over the powers and abilities of these characters next, and then we'll start discussing a little bit more about how the fight would actually go. Now we need to break down the powers of Sabretooth. Sabretooth is known as a mutant. He has a unique physiology which allowed him to get an unbreakable skeleton, which was augmented by the Weapon X program. Now, this was possible because of his extreme regenerative healing factor. That is his primary power, I will say that. It enables him to regenerate damaged or destroyed areas of his anatomy with far greater efficiency than an ordinary human. After some time, his power got even better. in which he could fully heal from injuries that result in massive tissue damage or loss of multiple gunshot wounds. He can get sliced, slashed, punctured, blunt force trauma, caught on fire, and he can heal from all of that within a matter of moments. It's almost as powerful as Wolverine's, might even be considered on par. Next, he has what's called contaminant immunity. His natural healing affords him virtual immunity to all things such as poisons, most drugs. It's virtually impossible for him to become intoxicated. He's also immune to all known earthly diseases and infections. This also extends his lifeline. His healing factor gives him a slower aging effect because he doesn't get the toxins necessary to cause aging. He's personally claimed that he's already 200 years old, despite being what looks like a 35 to 40-year-old man. Next, he has an adaptation of weather insulation. He can withstand incredible cold temperatures without getting any bodily damage such as frostbite or anything like that. He also has superhuman stamina, which allows him to continue fighting or doing whatever for at least 24 hours before he gets any fatigue toxins. So this allows him a lot of extra time for fighting. Along with that, he can hold his breath for up to 6 minutes underwater. And if his lungs were to stop working, maintaining or whatever, he can maintain his life by cutaneous respiration. He has a degree of superhuman strength. Because of this healing factor that he is able to push his muscles much further without sustaining injury, which allows him an extreme amount of strength. The upper limits is not yet known, but we have seen him able to lift up to 10 tons. Next, he has a high degree of superhuman durability, mostly because of his healing and his adamantium skeleton. Most of the blows that he is dealt, he can just shrug off because the skeleton does not allow it to get through to the softer tissues. As I mentioned earlier, he has a degree of superhuman speed. Uh, it allows him to also run on all fours like a cat. Most of his speed, though, seems to be directed towards physical actions rather than running. He has superhuman agility, which is very much cat-like. He can dodge multiple bullets at the same time. He's able to jump extremely high. He can run faster than the best athlete. This also gives him superhuman reflexes and superhuman senses. For instance, his feral mutation provides him acute senses so he can see with greater clarity and greater distance than an ordinary person. It extends into the ultraviolet and infrared areas of the electromagnetic spectrum, allowing him to see in near total darkness and retain the same level of clarity. His hearing is similarly enhanced and able to detect sounds that a human ear cannot possibly get, and at greater distances. For instance, he can detect the sound of light. or normal breathing at 200 feet away. He also possesses extremely well-developed sense of smell. He can recognize or track targets by scent, much the same way a dog or wolf does. His nose can detect chemical differences in scents of different deodorant brands. He also has claws and fangs. The claws are about 3 inches long, and his fangs extend about a quarter-inch past the normal canine levels. He does have psionic resistance as well. Uh, Both Jean Grey and Professor X had to work together just to find him. Now, on for his abilities, he is a close quarters combat expert. Uh, he's an excellent hand-to-hand combatant. He's a master tracker. He has a cunning intellect when it comes to all things warfare-oriented, uh, and for creating traps for people. Uh, More than once, he has proven himself capable in the brain over brawn aspect, able to dupe the likes of Logan into playing step by step into his ploys, besting super geniuses such as the likes of Sinister. He's also an expert marksman, and he can pretty much use any weapon he gets his hands on. He's an avid manipulator, and he's well adept at manipulating people and putting schemed plans into action so that others will follow his work. He has advanced covert ops training, and due to his cat-like nature, he has a pronounced assault leap that he does, which few can even detect is coming. Now, his main weaknesses are carbonadium poisoning. Carbonadium is similar to adamantium, but adamantium can be damaged by it, whereas uh, adamantium cannot damage carbonadium. Now, if you were able to know about Sabretooth's senses, you could use them to take advantage of him uh, and throw him off the track. There's also a thing called a Miramasa blade, which is an ionized blade capable of cutting through adamantium. And it also nullifies the effect of his healing factor. On the other hand, in the other corner, we have Warpath. He has various superhuman physical attributes. Some of them have fluctuated considerably over the years. Now, let's start with his most common. He has superhuman strength, which originally gave him enough to lift about 2 tons. However, over the time, he has progressively gotten more and more adept at his strength, and he now can lift upwards of 90 tons. As I mentioned earlier, he has superhuman speed. This speed lets him run at speeds up to 100 miles an hour. However, his current max speed is unknown. Like Sabretooth, he has superhuman stamina. It allows him also to fight in peak extreme circumstances for up to 24 hours before he gets any fatigue toxins. Now, unlike Sabretooth, he has natural invulnerability. His body is harder and more resistant to certain types of injury than most other humans. He can withstand force generated by great impacts, such as falling from several stories up, being hit by certain levels of energy blasts, being struck by a superhumanly strong opponent that would severely injure or kill a normal human, He's nearly bulletproof and knife-proof. He has superhuman agility, which allows him to do various jumps and flips on par with some of the best athletic performances in the Olympics. He has reflexes, allowing him to dodge most gunfire. Because even though he's invulnerable, he does have limits to it. If he continuously takes damage, he can be overwhelmed by it. He has superhumanly acute senses, much like Sabretooth. However, his are a little different. He is able to see with perfect clarity at much greater distances than an ordinary human, but he retains the same level of clarity even in near total darkness. So much like Sabretooth, his hearing is also enhanced, allowing him to hear things at greater distances that humans can't. He also has flight, which is kind of an interesting thing. He has the ability to propel himself through the air without any aid. The exact limit of this flight speed is unknown, but we've already seen him go faster than the speed of sound. He does have a regenerative healing factor, but it's nothing as impressive as Sabretooth's. Now, he has minor shaman abilities. It allows him to spirit walk, to see the spirits of others, and he was able to stop Selene's godlike state and soul hunger. And onto his abilities, he really is a formidable combatant, both armed and unarmed. His main attribute in a fight, which I really believe he would only pull out in the last moment, he has two knives which Storm gave him that are made out of vibranium. They're his last-ditch effort. He tries not to pull them out. Alright, so it's time to break this fight down. I think it really comes down to circumstances. Realistically, more or less, what is at stake here? Now, if it's just Sabretooth showing up and trying to take out Warpath, well, that wouldn't necessarily work out well for him, as Warpath is well versed in tracking and looking for signs of trouble. He would know what's coming, and he would be able to defend himself pretty well. Logically speaking, they can both track each other, and Sabretooth normally doesn't go up against people who can track him, other than Wolverine. So here's how I see this fight going. Sabretooth would simply bide his time until he knew for a fact that Warpath would be on his own, so that he wouldn't have to worry about any allies coming in to help him out. Let's say that Warpath is out in the woods by himself on a hunting trip trying to find a bear. Sabretooth would track him from a distance. I would say that in no circumstances would this be an easy win for either combatant. That being said, I can see Sabretooth using treetops to his advantages to pounce around and find the best point of attack. When he's in position, he would pounce down, and the first slash from his claws are going to strike hard and fast, but most likely they're not going to slice through Warpath's skin right away. I think the first slash is going to give him a moment to stop and think. I believe he could get the first strike undetected and would leap away afterwards to try and hide and reformalize a plan. Realizing it's not going to be that easy to shred his prey, I think that Sabretooth would decide it would be better to go in for close quarters combat. Now, it goes without saying, Sabretooth is the more vicious of the two. He is an outright killer in terms of fighting. Now, he will be there to kill Warpath. And while Warpath is willing to kill, he would be trying to subdue Sabretooth, not outright kill him. There would be a series of punches and kicks that would be thrown by both combatants, and I think most of them would be countered. However, Sabretooth's strikes will be more life-threatening, as they will be going for the kill shot, not just to incapacitate. His agility and reflexes would allow him to land more attacks overall. Now, as the fight progressed, there would be a lot of grappling and throwing each other, knocking each other around. I also want to note Warpath probably wouldn't use his vibranium knives for most of the fight. In fact, during the fight, Sabretooth might see them and toss them away to the side while he's flipping around, distracting him. At the end of the fight, I gotta say, I think Sabretooth would come out on top, but in no way would it be an easy win. I feel overall they are both very evenly matched. Sabretooth would not win every encounter. I think it'd be more like 51% of the time. I do say Sabretooth wins, but like I said, not an easy win. I want to thank Stacey Jackson for his contribution to this fight. Please tell me what you all think, and I would love to hear your comments and suggestions for future fights. Thanks again on behalf of Q&A, comics, movies, and video games. Stay awesome.